Hello and welcome back to Unstoppable. Today we have a special but very bittersweet segment coming to you. I'm joined by our former Unstoppable members, including Matt Kerwin, our former co-anchor Grace Stevenson, and our founding executive producer Andy Weber. It's great to have you all on here. But you might remember these guys from their time on Unstoppable. They were actually student athletes on their time off camera. Grace is on the squash team, Matt was a rower, and Andy is a runner. Although all three teams have now been cut since the summer's past announcement due to COVID-19 spending shortages. So I'm going to be talking with them about their experiences as student athletes at GW and what these cuts mean to the GW community. So I'll start off here, just a general question with everyone. What were your initial reactions when you first heard this news that the teams that you'd spent so much time with during your time at GW were now being cut? Andy, can I start with you?
Sure, and I'll stress first, comparing our teams to rowing and squash are a bit different because men's, in the sport of running at GW, there's three different sports. There's indoor track, outdoor track, and cross country. We lost one of those. So we did not lose what most teams lost. We were, in a way, we were spared, I thought, is kind of how I viewed it. We were fortunate enough to be spared that way. Besides that, initially, yeah, it was upsetting. It wasn't out of the blue. I think Matt will speak to the fact that we were experiencing pressure from administration early on in my senior year there, and we thought there could have been cuts beyond just one sport. We thought it could have been our entire track program. So my view is it will definitely hurt our ability to recruit going forward, to recruit high talent, losing a track season. However, maintaining outdoor track was very important. So as an alumni, I was upset, but I'll be honest with you, I thought it would be a lot worse because the way it was kind of portrayed to us by the department going into our senior year, I thought we'd lose both track, outdoor and indoor. So overall upset, but in a way somewhat relieved it wasn't a worse cut from what I was expecting.
Sure, and Grace, can you talk a little bit about your experience with the squash team?
Yeah, so kind of earlier in the season in January and February, and even into March when COVID first hit, we were hearing about schools like Stanford who were cutting their squash teams. And our coach really stressed to us, we are so lucky because we have our team and this isn't a situation that we're put in. And so to hear that news in July was definitely disheartening. Squash is kind of a lesser known sport of the college world. So it's definitely sad to see these teams and these big schools cutting their team. But the squash team was incredible and so special to me. So seeing my teammates go through that, and especially ones who already are seniors and have so much going on, to lose that is really sad.
Sure. And Matt, I know with you, the rowing team was such an important part of who you were throughout your time at GW. What were your reactions?
I was, Andy kind of put it to it a little more bluntly than I would have, but, I feel like we did have some inkling that, certain pressures from the department, how they treated each team, you could definitely tell that there was some unevenness there. But that's understandable just because of the difference between revenue making sports and non-revenue making sports. That's a big factor when it comes to it. I think that rowing was in a little bit different of a position since we were Division I per se. We were a varsity team, but men's rowing isn't in the NCAA like women's rowing is. And that kind of made it a little bit easier to put us on the chopping block. I was really sad personally. It really affected me a lot because I had put so much work into it. And, men's rowing and the rowing world in general, you see this huge world where you go, you spend 4 years, you make the best friends of your life with you there. And you hope to give back when you start making your career, and you hope to come back to these, the GW Rowing Invitational and these alumni races to, give back and support the team getting better and better. And I would say that our team was on a steady incline ever since it got its varsity status around 20 to 25 years ago. But the team has been around since 1956. So we were one of the teams that, was the oldest, that had oldest sport, one of the oldest sports to be cut at GW, regardless of the varsity status that we had.
Right. And like you said, 1956, that is a long history. And again, you guys were on the up and up last year specifically. And throughout your time at GW, the rowing team really had grown significantly. But I want to talk about, like you said, the not being a part of the NCAA has really taken a toll on the rowing team, not just at GW. And so the team's immediate response was to put out the petition that actually gained a lot of traction, not just with the rowers, but also with the GW community. A lot of people signed it. So what was your reaction to the team's immediate call to action and want to get things done and to become a part of the NCAA so that you guys could get the resources that you've been wanting for years now?
Well, so in particular, men's rowing had been offered such an opportunity, 20, 25 years ago, but the autonomy for the IRA and the Eastern Sprints, they wanted that. And, the also the aspect of betting shirts and other factors, probably contributed to why certain schools wanted the autonomy to control the IRA Eastern Sprints League, which is the leagues that we're in. So the Eastern Sprints is our conference, and the national championship is the IRA championship. And basically, the D1, the D1 status that would have come from the NCAA support would have been really helpful, especially now. I think that things would have been different, but as you said, it changed. It's a precarious situation, needless to say. But yeah, I mean, I think that, overall, going into the future, it's going to definitely be something that men's rowing has to think about in the grand scheme of things, because we're not the only team that was cut. As Grace put it, Stanford would cut a lot of their programs, and they're one of the top, athletic departments in the nation. Dartmouth lightweights were also cut. And women's lightweight programs were also cut as well. So it's not just affecting the men, but it's also affecting women's programs as well.
Sure. And that's something I wanted to ask, open it up to the floor, is do you think that GW could have done something different? Do you think that there was a better way to go about cutting these programs that had been growing significantly? I know, Andy, you said that you did sort of feel an inkling that this would happen in your senior year. So do you think that there was a better way to do this despite the outcomes of COVID-19? Or do you think that this was something that was coming? Andy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think there's sort of two ways to look at this. First of all, we know COVID played a role for sure. You saw in my sport, which is NCAA, and is probably the biggest sport NCAA and one of the cheapest. So we're one of the easiest to maintain. For non-revenue sports, we're one of the easiest ones to maintain. But yet Minnesota cut their entire men's track program. The same thing happened at Brown, but they were able to save it. So that COVID definitely played a role there. GW, though, if you were to read the letter that came from them when they cut these teams, they mentioned the size of our department. And I would go back ways before the current administration was in place. I felt that we had a truly fantastic basketball team my freshman year in 2015. And there was some drama that's well documented in the Washington Post between the athletic director and the basketball coach. And Patrick Nero built the program up to be a great basketball team and a really strong athletic program as well, with 27 teams. But we can't be that big unless men's basketball wins. And that's kind of my view on the thing, is that it started then. And I think it's because that's why we're seeing these cuts now. The new president came in and said, why aren't we winning enough with all these teams? And the fact of the matter is we just didn't have the men's basketball victory. With a school like our size, without men's basketball winning, it's hard to argue for 27 teams. It sucks for all of us. But if men aren't winning the basketball games and aren't bringing the TV ad money, because that's where the money is in our department, it's hard to argue for 27 teams. So I kind of feel like the whole drama when we lost that really strong basketball team that was able to beat top-ranked basketball teams themselves, that kind of started the decline towards possibly making the department smaller. That's where I kind of saw it happen.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I agree with what Andy said about how the basketball team and the revenue sports is what really matters to building up and expanding athletic departments. I think that, if the basketball team and other teams, were able to accumulate a lot more than they did over the past 4 or 5 years, because, I think we're learning that, this wasn't just a COVID thing. This was obviously an administrative thing, especially within the finances. And, President LeBlanc has said that he wanted to cut admissions by a certain percentage and up the acceptance rate for STEM related majors, because he's always been trying to build that up. And, that kind of was a double blow. When we got into this COVID-19, pandemic, and that really, that just increased the $220 million debt that they've always been mentioning. But, there's a journal called the Journal of Higher Education that put out an article about ranking all of the endowments for every university. And, GW has a significant endowment that is well over the 220 million. And, I'm not going to tell them how to do their business. Obviously, the university is run by these people. They're hired by certain people to do it. And, there's definitely, I think there was other ways to have done this, because I felt there was an extreme lack of transparency. And I know that our coaches, the alumni and a lot of the team was kind of blindsided in that sense. Obviously there were certain factors that, Andy mentioned, with the basketball team going on a decline, and, revenue sports in general not making as much as they should. But, I think that the department did their best to try to support us in a way to kind of, make us feel relaxed and not really. And that's why a lot of the teams, a lot of the athletes I know feel a little slighted by what happened.
Sure. And that is exactly what we've been hearing too on Unstoppable, and not really knowing how to, comfort some of the athletes that we not only cover, but are good friends. So we definitely empathize with that. And Grace, I kind of want to switch gears and talk to you. You had only been with GW for a year, and that you were a first year on the team. So your experience would have been cut short anyways. And what are some things that you were looking forward to that otherwise will not be met now? Or maybe some other forms of relying on the team that, other needs that other teammates have that won't be met. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think the student athlete aspect of being at a university provides so much more than just going to practice and playing games. I mean, you have academic help, you have access to tutoring, you have all these resources that a lot of people don't have access to if you're not a student athlete. And I think that on the other side of that, the squash team in particular has, half of the women's team are international students. And so they're coming to GW to play squash. And so I think it's really hard to see these resources and having access to all these things be taken away from them. GW has pledged to maintain their financial support for students on scholarship who are also student athletes throughout their time at GW, whether or not the team is still playing or not. But I think it goes so much more beyond that, because if you're an international student, there's some of the guys on the men's team are coming to the US for the first time, perhaps, may not be able to learn in the environment that the university provides. And so access to these academic resources and tutoring and that sort of thing, as well as like health and well-being and access to fitness training, all of those things, I think it's really detrimental. And just for me being as a freshman on the team, the squash team takes an international trip for training every 4 years. So we were supposed to do that this upcoming year. And just the camaraderie of being on a team, it's just, there's nothing really like it. And so I was just really excited to be able to really contribute more and more, hopefully, as I had gone on and been able to just be on an upward trajectory and increasing my own talents, and as well as like helping to improve the team. So that was kind of a bummer to see that come to an end.
Sure. And like you said, this goes far beyond what happens on the court or on the trail or even on the water. In Matt's case, this is a really emotional toll for athletes everywhere, and also educational resources, financial resources. Like you said, Grace, it goes far beyond the financial resources. So I'd like to open this question up just to close out for all of you. You all had the ability to have your time on the team, and for the rest of the athletes, this is going to be their final season, unfortunately. So do you have any just words of encouragement for these athletes that, were your former teammates, and just on a grander scheme, how this will impact the GW athletic community for years to come after this? Matt, I guess I'll start with you.
So as an alumni and a recent graduate of GW and the program, I think that the alumni response has been very good. We've kind of created a giant coalition, if you will, and created subcommittees in regards to media, finance, and handling resources. We've been in contact with the department trying to, still keep that varsity status. We still want to do that. If we can't do that, we definitely have contingency plans to try to keep the team active in whatever way possible. I think that the department and the school really, the administration didn't understand what deleting the rowing team from the athletic department would do in the aspect of recruiting and competition, because we now, after this year, won't be able to compete in the Eastern Sprints League, which is the top league that you can compete in when it comes to collegiate men's rowing. And we wouldn't be able to contribute and compete at the IRA level all the time, because we're now going to be put into a club status that would be lower. And we would have to row in other races with lower competition. But, as this is the last varsity year, according to the school, the top tier athletes that are currently on the team are going to eventually graduate or transfer. And anyone that does join the team is going to be at a different competitive level than what has been built up over the last 20 years or so now in the varsity status. And I think that has a lot of implications for the future. And I think that the advice that I would give towards the athletes, who all the current athletes know this information, just keep trucking and honestly make it the best final year you can. And, leave it to the rest of the alumni and everyone working behind the scenes, because we're going to do our absolute best to try to preserve the team and the traditions and everything that goes along with it to get back to that varsity status. Like, we definitely want that, and I know they want that. Obviously, it's going to have to take some time to rebuild that if we ever get back to D1 status again. But that I would just say keep trucking along and, persevere through this final year and show them what they're missing.
Andy, do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I mean, once again, my scenario is different, or your men's track scenario is different. We're one of the few A10 sports that were cut. Obviously, on the men's side. Men's tennis was also cut in the A10. But my sort of view on this is it's losing one team or one season of our three will be able to motivate the athletes. I think in this case, in cross country and track, Dayton only had cross country, and yet they were still able to win several years of the A10 title. So that also gives them, and they're able to prove themselves. Richmond has a very strong cross-country team and an outdoor track team, but no indoor track team. So this is similar across the A10. This has happened before in the A10, and programs are partial in the A10, especially in running. So I think this motivates the athletes who are still there, especially the ones who were freshmen last year, really seem to really want to run fast and run well. It gives them the passion to run harder, and I think to possibly even bring indoor track back if they're able to prove themselves. As I said, not to brag, but just simply the reality of it is the cross country and track have a better position because they still have two of their seasons. And we're very thankful, and I think we're just grateful that that's how it came down. But I think they can use this opportunity to run hard, to train hard, and to possibly even bring indoor track back, because of course you can also race unattached. So what will happen indoor track is those guys will still race. They'll pay for their own bus rides, their own van rides, but they will race under no-name jerseys up till the A10 meet, which they wouldn't race in. So there is still opportunity for them. Recruiting will be tougher to lose indoor track, but I think they can sort of pitch it as, hey, this isn't a first in the A10. It's happened before in the A10. Other teams only have partial teams, and you can still win a conference title. Dayton's proven it, as is Richmond. You can still perform well without having indoor track. So I'm optimistic, and I think we can still recruit a lot of people because it hasn't impacted our main sport, which is cross country, which is our main team sport, and outdoor track, which can still provide you with faster times. So I think it will still be it's a long road, but I think they definitely have an opportunity to maximize it, to maximize achievement from it. So.
And Grace, any final words, especially for younger athletes who are dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically this season is supposed to start in January for the squash team, but I mean, who knows with COVID what's going to happen. And so my heart really goes out to all the members of the team, and especially the kids who were recruited, who are coming in as freshmen this year. This is a really tough position for them to be in, whether it's squash or any sport. So I think, as what Matt was saying earlier, to just make this season the best that you can, and just to know that even if the school maybe isn't as supportive as they should be, there's so many people that are backing the team and the students, that they should feel supported in their efforts and know that no matter what, we're going to try our best to get things back on track.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being with us today. It's great to have you all, being interviewed this time rather than actually being members of Unstoppable. So as always, be sure to check out all of our social media channels for further content. And as always, we'll see you next time.